live?
That's a great way to start it. Yes, we are. Here we go. Throw myself back up. Good evening, everyone. Soon to be everyone. We are very lucky tonight. Very excited to have Tyler Dunsmore with us. Tyler, is an awesome resource, very experienced guide, and he's going to tie some steelhead flies for us tonight. So this will be fun. Tyler, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? How did you get into guiding? How long you been doing it? Where have you been doing it? And I know you've got some stories there.
Oh my goodness. Well, I've been at it quite a while now, I guess. But I guess how did I get started? Well, I've always fished, been introduced to it when I was young, and never ever thought of it through my teenage years or anything like that as something that I'd pursue on I'll call it a somewhat of a professional level, I guess we'll call it. But yeah, I mean, I always enjoyed fish, and then I went to school for aquaculture, you know, uh, and still thinking about not necessarily a guiding type of thing, but I sort of stumbled into it when I was living out in Tofino and working on fish farms out there as a diver and stuff, and local shop, and got tied in and started picking up some slack for that guy. And yeah, I just from there I ended up on the East Coast on the Miramichi guiding for Atlantic salmon. What an experience. Fantastic stuff. I mean, some of these flies we're going to tie tonight, like heavily influenced from my time on the Miramichi and the way I like to steelhead, at least personally. Um, heavily influenced from my time out there and those Atlantic salmon, I'm going to say techniques and the bugs that we used out there. So I'm going to say some of these flies that we're doing tonight, I've sort of imported from, I'm going to say the East and kind of put my spin on it for steelhead here on the Great Lakes, which is kind of cool and kind of fun. Um, and yeah, from there, oh geez, I ended up in Patagonia for a while, back to the interior of BC at some lodges in there for trout and guiding trout, and ended up home, settled down, family, and always kept my guiding thing alive. And in the last 10 years, it's I've really ramped it back up. Kids are older and that type of thing. And yeah, it's been pretty successful. I got to spend some time with the boys from SoFly there on the river, and I think some of that promotional work that I did with them has really helped. I think COVID has something to do with it, but I'm jammed with fully booked this spring, and now I'm not even sure we can run any trips, but we'll see what the lockdown holds. But hey, so yeah, I mean that's kind of a brief synopsis, I suppose, of how I got started, and I'm sure there's some people watching that maybe have heard it before, but hopefully hope you don't get sick and tired of hearing it. But yeah, and now other than that, I've really found myself engaging and getting involved with the Middle Grand Chapter of Trout Unlimited, which has been fantastic. With the people that are on the executive there and the work that's going on the river, it's really elevated my game, I think, and my education about the river and the fish that are in there. And I'm sure some of the people listening or watching, certainly know some of the people that are involved on that chapter, and they're a wealth of knowledge. And I'm like a sponge. So what can I say? So if you're out in the boat with me someday, I'll try to pass on all the things that I've learned to those who are with me for sure. So
That's very cool.
It's been great.
Kind of what you guys do. I mean, I think a lot of people are maybe somewhat on some level familiar with Trout Unlimited and some of the conservation work they do. But any projects that you guys are really excited about coming up, or places that?
Oh, well, absolutely, really excited. I don't like to go into specifics on that. Just we have a lot of things in the works. A lot of the stuff is I'm going to say preliminary or in a development stage, and there's so many stakeholders and partners that need to get on board and make things happen. There's a lot of pieces of the puzzle pulled together, and but I mean, I guess I could talk a little bit about some of our local streams on the Nith River. That we go in and we do the basic work nights where we'll go in and remove debris from the creek, try to get that creek flowing, flush out that sediment, expose the gravel so the steelhead and trout have places to spawn. get them access. If there's a beaver dam or something like that, we've done beaver dam removals. And we focus a lot on Nith River tributaries, as well as, Whiteman's Creek and tributaries there. And I'll call it the two main spawning tributaries of the Middle Grand River, or that Steelhead Run and that resident trout fishery that exists that use that. So, we have other exciting stuff in the works, long-term goals and things like that, but I shouldn't really get into details, that's for sure. But
Sure.
It's pretty cool, pretty fun, pretty great to be involved in that, and really makes you feel like you're part of that river. And I'm using the resource as a guide. I feel like as a guide or someone who uses that resource, you also have a responsibility to give back. And I try to do my best to do that. I may not be perfect, but I think I'm doing my part. So pretty great. So, and it's great to see the interest we have too. So if anyone's out there is interested, get involved, let us know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of different chapters of Trout Unlimited across Southern Ontario, but you guys definitely seem to be, not to put down any others, but one of the more active and certainly one of the ones with a lot of interest. And maybe that's because of just how popular the fishery itself is. But pretty cool stuff you guys are doing, for sure.
Yeah, well, I'll just say, I'll comment on that. It's definitely because of the people who are involved, and not just myself, but a lot of expertise there and a lot of experience. So, that's why we appear to be active. And I think we'd all like to be able to do more, but it's volunteer and we can only do what we can do, but we do a fair amount. So it's pretty great. Yeah,
for sure. Absolutely. And if anyone wants to get involved with you guys, they could get in touch through the Trout Unlimited website. That'd be the best way to do it.
The TU website. So Middle Grand chapter, I think it's called Middle Grand. Oh, you know what? I should look that up. Here, hold on. Sorry, I should have had that prepared.
All good. I think it's pretty easy
to find. Let's Google that real quick. I think it's just Middle.
I feel like there's maybe only 10 in Southern Ontario, at least, if that.
Yeah, Middle Grand chapter, Trout Unlimited, and I'm sure you'll get a hit on it.
Yeah. Yeah, shouldn't be fine.
Yeah, check it out. We just got a new website up there, and it kind of shows or profiles what we do, educate and restoration work and that type of thing. So
cool.
Yeah, good place to go check it out.
Yeah. If anyone has any questions on that, we do have the chat open here. So if anyone has questions as we're going, as we're tying, about fishing, about conservation work, anything it is, throw them down there. We'll get around to answering those best we can. Looping back to kind of the fishing thing, I'm really excited for this because you have a pretty interesting perspective, I think, on a lot of fishing. A lot of guides, I don't know, that I've met at least, they seem to have sort of a specialty. They're a salmon guide, or they're a steelhead guide, or they're a trout guide. And not a lot of them have done, all three of those big, very fly-centric species, and in so many places that you have. So I think it'd be interesting to kind of see how you blend all those influences here and what you bring. So I'm excited for this.
Okay, good. Sounds good. You're cutting out a little bit there, Chris.
Too. Yeah, I know there's a couple other things we want to talk about, but people here are here for fly tying, so maybe I'll just throw this over to you and let you kind of do your thing.
Let me take over, okay. I will take over. So tonight I am going to I'm going to try to get through two patterns, and so I'll just put a little disclaimer out there before I go ahead. I'm a better guide than I am a fisherman, and a better fisherman than I am a fly tyer. So just fair warning, but the flies do work, and I tie quite a few, and they're quick and fast. So I'm going to try to slow down. And I kind of like to tie and that way, because I like my flies to be buggy. I think they're more naturalistic that way. So I'm going to start with I'm going to call it a version of a muddler. I'll call it a steelhead muddler. And I'm going to say it's sort of developed from obviously a muddler minnow, but it's my steelhead muddler. And and these flies I'm tying tonight are definitely, I'm going to say a low water fly, and specifically work on the Grand. I hooked some beautiful steelhead on these patterns, last fall and times before that, and very much a fall fly. So it'd be a muddler minnow crossed over almost like with a falcata style kind of thing. And I tie different variations of it. So I'm just going to tie one of my variations and share it with you guys. So bear with me. And Chris, please, if you see something I'm doing that I'm not explaining well, feel free to help me out in that department. I'm just going to close this door behind me really quick. I got a little bit of noise.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Did you feed the dog?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Love you.
Love you too. That was Polena, my oldest daughter. She's named after the Rio Polena River in Chile, by the way. So there you go.
That's terrific.
Okay, so I've got a hook here. I'm using I'll show you a number 7 Daiichi. And it's the, I call it the style 2052.
Yeah.
And you can see I've got the silver finish or the bronze. I really like the silver and bronze finish for a lot of my steelhead flies. Turn this off. So let's mount that in the hook there. Hope everybody can see that okay. I usually like to tie with orange thread. I'm using black because I'm out. And I'm using a 6/0 uni thread tonight. I usually tie with 6/0 when I'm doing, I'm going to say, just a number 7s, number 6s, number 4s, that type of thing. If I scale down, I'll go down to 8/0. But I'm using black, so I'll just start the thread there on the hook. Towards the front, get a couple wraps. I have to double up on my glasses, folks, because my eyes aren't the greatest, so don't laugh at me for doing this, but now I can see. So I'm just going to cover that hook and create a base, wind that forward, and get rid of that tag. Oops, hold on here. Got to get off started properly. Tighten that up a bit. That's better. Okay, just going to create a little base, wind that forward on the hook. Nice even wraps. It's not perfect, but that's okay. I'm going to cover it up. And I like to just end right about there, right? So that thread's in line with the hook point. And then I'm going to wind in some tinsel here. I have a uni mylar I've got here. It's like a copper and a blue one side, copper on the other. I'll tie with either color. I just keep a couple variations. When I have that two-sided tinsel, I got blue and then copper. So when I mount this on my hook, I want the copper to stick out or face out towards me. So I'm actually gonna tie it in so the blue side's facing out or towards me when I tie this in. So when I fold that over to wind the tinsel on the hook, the gold will show up. And I'm just gonna wind that back to create a little tag here. So my tag, I stop my thread at the hook point, but I like to wind my tag back behind the hook point. And then I'll wind that forward. Nice even base. Just check alignment there. And I'm just going to create my tag. So blue side's facing in. I want the copper out. So I just fold that across, down, and I'll wind it around there and create my tag, 2 or 3 wraps. I'll bind that down, lock it down. And I'm going to keep that tinsel there because I need that for the body. Just going to move that out of the way for a moment. And I'm going to grab some, I got some French, what do we call this stuff? Yeah, uni French silver. So it's that sort of, it's a small size. It's not flat tinsel. It's the
oval tinsel.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to mount that in as well. I'm just going to take my thread forward a bit on the hook. bind down the rest of that tinsel I had on there. Tie in my oval braided silver tinsel. So this is going to make up the ribbing over the copper. So I've started that closer to the front of the hook, wound it all the way back to create a nice even base. Make sure my materials aren't going to fall out. And I'm just going to grab that tinsel and the oval and take it back just a bit. And I do have to put a tail in this, a little tail. So I'm actually going to use a little bit of golden pheasant, and I'm just taking a nice reddish brown feather here off. Get rid of some of this, strip down that, oops, I broke that one. I like to get rid of this fuzzy stuff off the stem, strip it down. So I'm left with that, and actually just leave that right on the hook. Pull it forward. These pheasant feathers kind of have a natural bend or curl to them. I just trap it all on there so I can mount it like so. 2 fingers, I'm going to switch hands here. Up, pinch the thread, lock it down. See if that tail mounted. Yeah, that's pretty good. Lock it a couple more turns and lock it down. Get rid of the stem of the feather, and then I always like to kind of leave some extra and then lock that down to the shank of the hook. It gives me a nice even base for winding that tinsel forward. So now I'm taking my thread right back towards the front of the hook. And stopping there, I'm going to leave some room for that muddler style head or that deer hair head there. So I've kind of just grabbed, I don't know if what you call that, Chris, on the hooks. I was trying to remember what this was called.
What's
you know, that design of the hooks where they fold that.
Return eye.
The return eye. Okay, perfect. I should know that, I guess.
Not really. I don't see any reason to know it.
So I've just come up onto the return eye about 3 or 4 wraps there. That's kind of my gauge when I'm doing this. So now I'm going to create my body, I guess, with my copper tinsel out. So let's just hope I should have wrapped that tail a little closer to the back. Just going to try to cleanly grab that there. Okay, so here we go. I'm wrapping that forward on the hook, overlapping that just a little bit with every wrap, getting it fairly tight. You can see I cut a pretty long piece, so I have lots to work with while I'm doing this. Wrap that forward. And I'm getting right up to the return eye here. I'm going to fold it right across the top. Lock it down on the side, like so. A couple extra wraps, and then I can trim that off. I'm done with that. Yeah, and now I'm ready for my ribbing. So you can get away without a rib. I just kind of I really like the rib. I think it just gives a little bit of contrast and a little bit of, what would you call it?
Like
a little bit of extra
or
something for the fish to look at, I guess.
Yeah.
So I'm just ribbing that forward, nice even wraps. It looks kind of fancy too. Get that nice. Lock that down. So really simple body on this one. And you can do these flies with, you can use different colors. You can dub them with olive or, brown or black, whatever color you want, and do a ribbing that way. I kind of like these in really low water. I like these really thin profile flies. And I find sometimes on a a mid-morning day after, everyone's been through a run fishing their hobo spays and that type of thing. You throw in a smaller, buggier pattern that has a sleek, thin profile in the water, yet, it sleek and thin, but full. I don't know what to say. Sparse, I guess, would be the word. So you want it to look as full as it can be as a small fly, with the light coming through it, maybe trailing a few air bubbles, which that deer body head is really good for. And I find that just a little silver or gold goes a long way, especially in the fall. And I'll say that these fish, when I'm fishing, they're our fall steelhead in our river, and I mean probably in the Saugeen and the Maitland as well, especially ones that are naturally reproducing on the Maitland and in the Saugeen. They get pretty trouty at times. They'll take a fly like this swinging through a run, and I tend to broadside them a lot. I don't fish straight. I'll go way out across the current, and even in the really slow, long tail waters, I like to throw out across that, and I'll throw a big downstream mend in it, and then bury the tip, and then just get that current to go and just bring that fly across broadside real slow, just down underneath the surface a little bit. And a lot of times when you're fishing with that much belly in slow water, your line just kind of all of a sudden just kind of stops. It feels like maybe you're dragging a weed or top of a rock. But as soon as I feel that, I'm sweeping towards the bank, try and set the hook. They pick it up and they'll drop it as quick as they pick it up. And sometimes it's that, okay, what do I do here? Because you think they picked it up, and then they'll drop it. But they'll follow, but there's got to be just enough weight or enough pull to say to yourself, got to get it into the corner of the mouth. It gets a little tricky, a little technical, but
interesting.
I think I move a lot of fish and you feel them, but because they're trouty, they just want to pick it up. They're not really turning on it hard like they would on a hobo spay in high water or something like that. So pretty interesting. It's neat because you can move fish to the fly, whereas they won't necessarily come to a fly or in a pressured pool, let's just say. So it's a great technique, and it'll make the fish, it'll get them to go. It's just a matter of that they're a little bit finicky at times. Not always. Sometimes they absolutely crank it, and that's that. But
so broadsiding it. Are you looking to give them a side profile, or do you think it's the speed difference? Because that would still swing faster. You say you swing relatively slow, but it'd still swing faster than, 45 and down kind of thing, no?
Well, not in the water I'm fishing. I definitely am trying to show them a broadside fly, so a broadside presentation, but I'm in low water. Remember, it's a low water fly, right? So that push of current you're after when you're swinging isn't always there. So as much as I want to show it broadside, it's also about getting that fly to push water,
right?
And not dead drifting.
Yep.
So a big downstream men try to catch that current with that floating line, right? So it's pushing on that and drawing that fly across.
Yeah. So you are speeding it up a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying this. It's I wouldn't call it speed. What I'm really trying to do is just get the fly to move, because the water can get that slow in the river in some of these spots, in some of these lies. So, if we have good water, I would definitely approach that a little differently. But I like to fish these flies on an outside seam. Let's say you're on the inside on a bar and you get a good long cast, and say there's the far bank has a foam line on it. So let's just say I throw out, and I'm fishing floating lines. I'm not using tips, right? And I'm going to go out across that current, set the fly up on that seam or on the opposite side of the foam line, let's just call it. And maybe I don't go with the full downstream mend if there's a good push. Maybe I'll just hold it back just a bit, drop the tip, but I'm still on that foam line. I'm still fishing a bit of belly out there because I want that fly to draw across that foam line.
Sure.
And then tighten up, and then I'll finish my swing out through the bottom. So I do in what I would call the main lie, or that specific seam that I'm targeting, I am trying to broadside these flies. I want them to push water. A broadside fly on a grand is pretty great presentation. You fish the Maitland often. And in my experience, I'm not a Maitland River expert, but we all know that the water's cold when we fish the Maitland, and sometimes here in the Grand, we're fishing more favorable temperatures and that type of thing. And so on the Maitland, you're definitely sort of getting that tighter angle sometimes and a tip, and trying to get that fly down in the water column and slow it down, because the fish, their metabolism is kind of slowed down because of that cold water. I don't have to worry about that in the Grand and at certain times of the year, right? So I want it to push water. I want it to move. I want it to broadside. I want, the Grand's got fresh fish coming through. They don't stop up for long. They stop up for a bit, but then they're shooting up those tributaries, and they want to get it up into that water, and that cold, clean water. And they can be pretty aggressive. So, part of the idea, I guess, is to wake them up with a subtle presentation. Does that make any sense? But I guess that's how I would explain it. So
interesting.
That's how I like to fish them. But
that's a great explanation. That's awesome. We do have one other question kind of related to that from Patrick. Is wondering what your leader setup looks like off of that dry line when you're fishing these.
Yeah, so I'm just using a 12-foot tapered steelhead leader, and I will often take in low water, I'll cut back, let's just say like a 10-pound Rio 12-foot steelhead leader, a 13-foot, I forget, I think they come in 12s, they're steelhead leaders. I'll cut them back a foot or two, and I'll splice on, sometimes I'll drop down to like an 8-pound Maxima. If I'm really finding it tough, I might go to fluoro. I don't use fluoro very much, a 10-pound fluoro or something. But, I'm trying to fish a lot about 13, 14 feet. That's what I fish off my floating line. So I'm getting out there away from the end of the fly line quite a ways too. So, sure. And you'll find if you're fishing a Scandi line without a tip, you need that 13 or 14 foot just to get the resistance of the water for that cast too, right? You want that line stick. So it's necessary for that reason as well. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Cool. Yeah, no, I think so. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, well,
cool.
Fly, I guess.
What's that?
Back to the fly, I guess.
We better keep going, right?
There'll be some more questions.
You tell me if I'm tight on time.
Oh, no. I got lots.
Okay, so where are we? Okay, I am going to mount the wing. So I think what I got here is I got a little bit of fox here. So I kind of like this. I like these guard hairs to stick out back there and wiggle around. So I'm going to use a hair wing, not necessarily, you can use a turkey wing or something along those lines. And when I'm tying my flies for my fly box, and, I'm using these for guiding at times too. And I used to tie a lot of Atlantic salmon wings, hair wing style. So it was just kind of my thing. And I'm not very good at mounting turkey feathers either. I'll admit that openly. But so I like this fox. So I like to just trim it off, and I like to keep that under fur in it because it really pops down close behind the head of the muddler head of the fly. And you can see I have not aligned my tips or done anything like that. I just want it to be kind of a little bit all over the place, nice and buggy. And I'll tie that in. Let's just measure that up. Just, some of those guard hairs are hanging out beyond the tip of the tail there. And I've got that nice under fur right up in here. So I'll just kind of line that up like so. Looks about right for proportion. Put my other set of glasses on so I can see what I'm doing. There we are. Okay, so I pinched that off, bringing my thread up. I pinched that thread in there. And now I'll just pull that through and lock it down. One turn, a lot of guys like to do that twice. I don't always do that. Shortcut. So that looks pretty good there. A couple turns. Just going to draw that back. Put a couple turns in front of that. Lock it down. Cut this off. Oh, look at that. I cut the thread.
Once. Wouldn't be a stream without that.
I'm going to restart that. I hope that doesn't build that head up too much. That's inevitable. I practiced this fly a couple times before I came on. I didn't cut my thread, but of course I did that time. That's okay. All right, so I've got that mounted on there. And then I'm going to take a little bit, I want to put a little hot spot on here, or a little like imitate a little bit of a gill or something from the muddler. I just have a sort of a bright piece of ostrich furl. And I just tie that in right in front of that wing, right beside the wing that I just did. 2 turns, and I'm just going to spin this in there a couple of times. Just like I treat it like I'll call it almost like a hot spot or a gill. Just a little something for those fish to look at. So 2 turns, lock that in, trim this off, don't cut the thread. Get rid of those. I'm not being too fussy with this. Like the deer hair is going to cover all that up, just as long as it doesn't fall apart. And hopefully that just shows through that underside of the fly when that's coming across. Just a little bit of red sticking out beyond that. Just they could see it through that deer hair head that I'm going to form next. So my muddler head comes next. And I'll just grab here. I'm actually using, I think this hair came from a fall deer. So it's a little bit, it doesn't pop or spin up real nice. But I actually don't mind it for doing my muddlers, because I find it actually it'll absorb the water a little bit, and it helps the fly, not ride up so much. There's a little bit of underfur in it. I actually leave it right in there for my muddlers. Just a little thing that I do.
Yeah. So
it doesn't pop nice when you spin it.
Sure.
It's really kind of not the greatest to work with, but I think its qualities in the water are a little different. So I've just taken this fur, or not fur, but deer hair, I guess I should call it. And I've cut off a little clump here. And to prep it for this fly, what I like to do is I like to take that and actually just cut it in half. You'll notice I didn't stack or align those guard hairs again. I want them a little all over the place. And I take those 2 parts, and I'm just going to kind of like mix these together. So I'm getting the bottom of that thicker fur at the bottom. That helps it pop. I spin this together a little bit, mix it up, make sure it's not perfect. Kind of pay attention to those guard hairs, or I'm calling them guard hairs, but the tips of the deer hair, I should call it. And then I just kind of, look at where the tips of those deer hair are and try to judge about how far back I want those. And I like them to stick back a bit, at least have a few stragglers back and form part of that fly. They're a little stiffer in the water. I think it might give that fly a little bit of extra movement, a little buggy looking. So I'm just going to mount that on about there. Those tips of the deer hairs back about, halfway to 2/3, at least some of them. And I'm going to spin that deer hair in. So I'm going to do 2 wraps again. And I'm going to just let that pop. Oh, I didn't spin up too good.
So if somebody was looking at...
I think I can salvage it.
Oh, yeah, for sure you can. So if somebody was looking at deer hair, maybe they've got a couple patches and you called that a fall or suspected fall deer. You're saying that the hair is probably not quite as coarse as usual and has a little more under fur, right?
This particular deer?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not as coarse, like not as hollow. So when you spin it, it doesn't pop real nice. It's a little flat, a little drab. It's not, a lot of people, I don't prefer to really work with it, but I do like its qualities on a muddler so it doesn't float up on the surface.
Yeah. So along with that less coarse hair, there's just less air in it as well, so it's not going to be quite as buoyant, right?
Yeah, exactly. It tends to absorb the water a bit too.
Yeah, cool.
So let's see how I did here. I really didn't do a great job with that. Feel like I should get a do-over, but I don't think I'll do that. Maybe I can pick some of that out of there. Okay, I'm going to roll with that. Let's hope this head turns out all right. So I'm going to pull that back now, take my thread in front of it, wind it down. I'm getting to the finishing stages here. And then I'm just going to trim this out real quick. So those tips of the deer hair are mostly facing to the back of the fly. And trimming this down. I don't need a big muddler head, nice and small, nice and buggy. It can be a little rough, it's fine. I like it to have a good profile. And I'm not really happy with the way that's spun, so I'll have to, when I finish tying this, I'll have to show you the good side. You can see I'm angling my scissors back here just a bit. I don't want to catch the tips of those nice deer hair back over there. Pick a few of these out. Trim this down some more. I'm sure, Chris, you could put me to shame as a fly tire.
Again, I don't know why everybody needs to say that in their stream. It seems like a mandatory thing everybody says. I doubt I could. That thing looks really fishy. I like it a lot.
Oh, good.
I like the sparse muddlers. I don't know. I've got no confidence fishing a really dense muddler myself.
Yeah, well, dense muddlers have their place. Like I like a dense muddler. I've had some great success on dense muddlers up in Algonquin Park and things like that, and actually gotten into some back bays on some lakes in early spring and been cast into the boggy areas in the wood, and those are the first areas in a brook trout lake up there that warm up and draw the bait fish in. And it seems like, I could pull, streamers and Mickey fins and muddlers, but I put on a big full dressed muddler and put it out there and actually pop it like a bass bug, and the brookies come up and they destroy it. It's pretty amazing. But
cool.
So I like a full dressed muddler in situations, but when it comes to a steelhead muddler, I like it to be a little lower profile, a little buggier. This could imitate a bait fish. This could imitate a fall caddis. Or any other host of things. So actually, I think that looks all right. I'm going to finish this off. Try not to show too much black thread. A couple turns. I don't need to build up a big head. You see, I don't use a whip finish very much. Couple reasons. I never really got good at it. And I think when I was younger and started fly tying, it was one of the items I couldn't afford to buy, so I figured out how to finish my heads without one. Just break that thread off, put a little head cement on there. So I think I would have tried to crowd the head of that eye just a little bit more with my muddler head. She's pretty, she's a little, she's not as pretty as I would have liked, but it's what we got, so. Let's see here. Yeah, a little too much thread there, but I don't know if anyone can, where is it? There we go. So I had another one I tied earlier that I like a lot more. So let's show that one off. So there it is.
Nice.
So little steelhead muddler. Pretty buggy, nothing fancy. But I can tie those with you can use a dubbing body, so you can use your olives and whatnot, and just put a silver rib and still do that. So I tie some variations. I'll tie it on a bronze hook, and then go with the silver body with the gold rib, opposite that. So kind of sticking with that theory that, if I remember the theory, gold on a sunny day and silver on a cloudy day, I think it is. Is that right? If you're a spoon fisherman or something, old school stuff. But
could be.
Yeah, so there you go. A steelhead muddler, a little bit rough around the edges. It's the first one I've tied since last fall. But great little pattern in low water. And you can pare them down, make them smaller, or dress them a little further. That's about as full dressed as I would go.
Sure.
For a low water fly.
So another question for you then, kind of going back to how you like to fish them. Do you hitch flies ever in Ontario?
I've experimented, but I haven't had a great deal of success with hitches.
Okay.
That's just me. I like to tie my loop on the front of that, so she moves around a lot. And I'm not skating them, right? They're subsurface, so you can hitch that. But I personally haven't done really well on it. I know that there's some fellas that will hitch a bit, like hitch a muddler. If they're wake and dries, and I'm not an expert on wake and dries by any means. There's some Larry Halleck's out there who obviously knows or has the experience more so than any of us at doing it. He's really sort of got that down to a science. But I do know that he'll hitch some flies or a muddler, I think, at times. But some of the waking patterns, I don't think they don't hitch those per se. They create enough disturbance on the surface that it's not necessary. But
yeah, cool.
By all means, try hitching it. It just may be my personal experience. But
sure.
Yeah, so that's
sorry, one more.
Muddler, nothing fancy.
Yep.
Good little fly, a Steelhead Muddler, Ontario style.
Nice. So we had one other question before we move on from Dave. Yeah. He tuned a little late. He's curious when you would fish those. You said it was a fall fly. Any reason you wouldn't give it a go in spring?
Well, hey, my home water's the Grand, right? So, and primarily we have a fall run that comes through. Now we do have spring fish, but they tend to come before the opener, get in and get out. So we don't have that like fantastic drop back fishery that you see on the Maitland or the Saugeen or something. They seem to either fall out early once they're done if they've got water, or they just sort of trickle out of those tributaries through May and June, and every once in a while you get an incidental. So so that is the reason why I don't really focus on spring steelhead very much on the Grand. So it's simply for lack of trying. Let's just say. So by all means, give it a go. I mean, once those Hendricksons and Caddis gets moving in the spring, there's no reason, why that wouldn't work, right? So.
Yep. Cool. That's great.
Yeah.
Probably not winter just because it's too cold and fish are probably not quite so high. Yeah, but yeah, hopefully that helps, David. Cool. On to part 2, I guess.
Part 2, yeah. How are we doing for time? Okay.
I've got nowhere to be, so.
All right. Well, let's tie a bug.
Let's do it.
See if I can remember this one. I'm just eyeing up my Steelhead Muddler here again. I'm gonna have to get a do-over. Didn't turn out very good. We'll tie another fly another time that looks really good. I should have practiced.
Send us a photo of your do-over and we'll try and swap it out somehow.
Oh, okay, yeah, perfect. I'll spend a couple hours building one and we'll go from there. Okay, so I'm gonna do a buck bug. So this is definitely, I was introduced to it on the Miramichi, and awesome Atlantic salmon fly. I caught lots of fish on them. They used to fish one called the Green Machine out there all the time on the Miramichi, which was kind of like a go-to fly when I was there. I actually gravitated towards a brown buck bug, which is basically the same pattern in different colors. And I tie all kinds of variations of this. You can do the Shady Lady, which is a black, I'll call it a black buck bug, or a brown buck bug, which I'll tie. And the Green Machine is one. I don't do well on the Green Machine in Ontario. I've never taken a fish on a Green Machine in Ontario rivers, but I have taken fish on buck bugs on the Maitland, on the Saugeen, and on the Grand as well. So if you have fish in the river, and water temps are key. You gotta be in that. Once it goes down into the 40s, you might as well kind of start thinking a little differently. But if it's 51 to 58, I mean, you're in some pretty prime water conditions for fishing bugs and muddlers and that kind of thing. And I know that the window of opportunity is relatively small. and I'm talking Fahrenheit because I always I've always talked that way when it comes to temperatures in the water for fish. But I would say, so what is that going to be? 12 degrees, 14, 15, 16 degrees kind of thing, I would say, Celsius. And these buck bugs actually are fantastic little trout flies too, if you tie them small, like a number 12. They work really good for the residents too. So you can fish them on your trout spay, which is a lot of fun. So good stuff. So I got a hook set up here, and with a little more history on the buck bug. I think I brought that back to Ontario with me from the Miramichi, and it was a long time ago. And I was fishing down around the Highway 21 on the Maitland in late September. It was just, I wanted to go up and go fishing and give it a try. And I'd fished the Maitland as a kid for steelhead and that kind of thing. And I went up, and I came back from the east, and I thought, why would I? I'm going to say I made that transition from like I used to center pin when I was 14, 15, 16 kind of thing. And I had made that transition and commitment to the fly rod, but hadn't really tested it out in Ontario. So lo and behold, at below 21 in the tail out, I was fishing a buck bug and got a nice steelhead in late September. So I was very pleased about that. And so yeah, it can be done. And I've also caught them in the Saugeen, down below the graveyard hole in the big tail out down there. So pretty cool. Oh, at the Bayfield River, I've gotten some on bugs too in October. So they work. I mean, steelhead are essentially grow up in those tributaries and rivers and live off of insects. So when they return back, there's a certain amount of imprinting. Some rivers are better than others, but the Grand is good for that, obviously. But if there wasn't insects in tributaries and the main stem of the Maitland and the Saugeen, you probably wouldn't have steelhead in there. So you know that they're feeding on those bugs, and they'll take a fly. So it's a lot of fun to fish this way. I mean, I'm going to start rambling on here, but one thing, if more anglers would focus on a floating line and a bug that fishes close to the surface, instead of jumping right in with a tip and a big fly, and it's fine. And I don't, I'm not saying this is my opinion or anything. I'm speaking purely from the sense of the quality of the fishery, or the potential better quality of the fishery. And this is definitely an Eastern influence, but let's just say that we all came to the river in the morning and we tied on a buck bug with a floating line and went through the run on the first pass. I bet you there'd be a few fish caught, or taken. But if we did that with a tip and a big fly, we'd all go through the run on our first pass, and yeah, there'd be a few fish taken. But you go back up through your second pass, more often than not, the run's put down. The fish are down. You've run through it with the tip, with the big flies, you got a few fish, you shut them off. If we all went through once with a buck bug and a floating line, we'd get a few fish. I bet you we rotated to the top and then went to our intermediate tip, maybe a fly that's just a little bit deeper, and took a pass through there. I bet you another fish or two might get caught. On our third pass, if we went to the heavy tip and the big flies and went through, I bet you we might pick up another fish or two. So if you've got a steelhead run to yourself, don't jump right in with and dredge the bottom. I mean, you're kind of essentially like shooting yourself in the foot in a way. Take your time, fish the different levels through the run, and if we all did that a little bit, I think you might find the percentage of hookups almost go up a little bit. And I know any given day conditions are different, may not lend itself to that. And a lot of us are weekend warriors, and we want to get out there and we want to get a fish. I get it, like that's important, and we all want that. But there's also something you said for quality, and a steelhead that's you've raised to a fly, and he's taken it near the surface is always more satisfying to me than one that you've dredged up. But that's my little spiel, I guess I should say. I'll say, but.
I mean, I think sorry to add on to that a little bit and delay the fly a little. I think I totally agree, frankly. Because if you look at, I think a lot of people, when they think of, folks on the dry line thing, it's almost like a purist kind of angle, or at least people see it that way. I think, if you relate it back to trout fishing again, that's exactly how you should approach water for trout too. If you're fishing and trying to like really pick apart a piece of water, going with the dry,
Yeah.
because you're not going to put a fish down if you're fishing in dry fly right. But if you fish a streamer or a nymph right, you could very well put a fish down. So like, work your way through in stages. I think that's awesome. That's really good.
Yeah, no, yeah, well, thanks. I mean, for reinforcing that. I think there's a lot to it. So I am going to tie a buck bug, and I just started doing this, and I started my thread in the wrong spot, but that's okay. I can fix that really fast. So I'm still using my black 6/0, and this hook is so I'm tying it on a number 4. This is about as big as I would tie a buck bug in our rivers. I'm picking a number 4 just because I'm demoing, but again, so I got a Daiichi here, 2151, size 4, black. You'll notice I don't have an upturned or downturned eye, straight eye for the buck bug. Oh, sorry, straight eye. I don't know if you can see that, but it's not upturned. It's in line with the hook. So I actually I prefer that, and actually the muddlers could tie well on a straight eye as well. I use a downturned eye when I get down into like a number 12 if I'm tying little wee bugs, and I do that for sure. I've taken steelhead on number 10s, little guys. So haven't taken any really big ones on number 10s, but I've gotten those 2 to 4 pound kind of fresh shakers or jacks that way. And they're a lot of fun. So okay, so a buck bug. So when we build this fly, I really don't want to get any thread on the shank of that hook because I want to spin my deer hair on there. And I probably really have the wrong kind of thread for spinning deer hair. I should use some gel spun or something like that. But I'm going to stick with this in this case. And I'm just lining that thread up with the hook point because that's going to be where my tag is. I'm just going to start it there, a few wraps. Trim that off. And didn't think a lot about color, but why don't we stick with our blue and our copper, and I'm going to go with a copper tag. So again, I'm facing the blue towards me when I mount that on the side of this hook. A couple of turns, and I'm just going to wind back over that tinsel. I'm going to wind the tinsel back over the thread. Just a couple of turns, a little tag. Create my tag. 1, 2 turns should be good and get me in line with the eye of the hook. Lock that in. And I can get rid of that because that's all we need for this fly. Does everybody see that okay, Chris? In the right spot? So now I'm going to do a little, I'm going to call it a butt. And I'm going to use orange, burnt orange on this one for my brown buck bug. So I really like my orange and brown bugs. Seems to be a nice little color combination. This is burnt orange. And I'm just going to create a little dubbing loop. Again, I would generally use orange thread because this black will show through the orange a bit. But I'm just going to do a little dubbing loop. I always make dubbing loops almost all the time when I'm dubbing, unless it's a really small fly. It's almost more of a force of habit. Fit my orange in there. I grab my hackle pliers. And I lost my my spinner for spinning these loops. So I have this like old tool I dug out made out of coat hanger. I spin this up, but yeah.
I think there might be a shop that could help you with a replacement if you want one.
Yes, yeah, put that down for me. You're writing down my needs as I do this.
Orange
right?
thread and dubbing spinner. Yep, got it.
Yeah. Write that down. Put it on my tab. So I want to keep that pretty tight. Don't really want that to be too shaggy. I'm probably using the wrong kind of dubbing here for this, but So I'm just going to create my butt and my tag. So 2 or 3 wraps. I'm going to lock that down. And I'm going to trim that off. Hope everybody sees that okay. Hope I'm doing a good job explaining as I go. I don't do a lot of fly tying demos. A couple turns to lock it in. And that dubbing is a trilobal dub burnt orange. I probably should have used, I've got some other version of sort of, they refer to this as a caddis dubbing. It's not quite so, it's a little finer, more of a dry fly dubbing I could have used, but I'm just going to actually trim those loose ends that are hanging out from that dubbing loop and just make that butt a little closer to the fly there. Just clean it up a bit. And now I'm going to start my deer hair. So we're going to do brown. So I'm going to get a clump of this stuff off. I'm going to use my different deer hair, not my fall deer, but my higher quality deer hair. So I've cut some off. I got a little too much there. I'm just going to I like to trim that in half. I don't need a lot of deer hair. These get trimmed down pretty flat. So I got my little clump of deer hair there, and I'm going to spin that in. There's one. And wind that thread forward through it. I cut all the tips off before. So again, I'm just going to use, whoops, spilled it everywhere. Cut some fresh stuff. Trim that. You don't really need the tips or anything, so I just got another bunch of deer hair. And I'm just building this fly up towards the eye of the hook, spinning the body of this fly, of the buck bug. And you can see I'm not packing it back too tight. I don't need to pack it too tight, not like a bass bug or something. I don't necessarily want it floating on the surface. I want it to absorb a little water so it fishes subsurface. Spinning my deer hair. And a couple more clumps. And I might have the proportions on this fly a little bit out. I feel like I could have set the tag and the butt a little further forward. That's okay. I got one more clump here. And I'm just scrounging deer hair in front of me here to create this all gets trimmed down. I don't need very much on the front there to finish this off, or I'm going to crowd the eye pretty bad. Yeah, spin up too good. Okay, so once we're at this point with a buck bug, and I probably should have had one of these done and pre-trimmed for you. But I'm just going to tie this off. I got to fix that. Grab some of the hair in there. Trying not to trap any of that deer hair there. So at this point, I'm just put a little head cement on there. Actually cut the thread at this point. Just put a little bit of that on there so it glues it down. And then I trim my deer hair. If I was a little more prepared, I probably would have had one of these or two of these already trimmed. but I can do that. So we want to get this nice low profile and a good sort of cigar shape. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so I want to get a nice cigar kind of shape. I want it to be full, but not too full. So when you get into the role of tying a bunch of these, you can trim pretty quick and get them the size fairly fast. I probably won't be overly successful with that, but I'm going to grab that, give it a haircut here pretty quick. Don't be afraid to take big bites and trim that down. And I'm going to try to get that cigar shape here. Roll it to the front nice. Rotary vise is nice for this. Never used to have one. And so it's funny, I used to tie these flies a lot back in the day. I used to do a little bit of fly tying when I lived out east for one of the shops out there.
Oh yeah.
You wouldn't tell by those muddler heads I spun earlier, but I used to do a fair amount, and I used to tie these sort of in a painstakingly way where I got to put a hackle on this, and I'd mount that in and then spin my deer hair with the intent of winding that hackle forward. And I'd trim my deer hair and cut my hackles off all the time. So I kind of learned that this is a much more efficient way to go over time. And actually watched an old fishing friend of mine has I think a little vid on Instagram. It's actually really good. It kind of refreshed my memory on the right way to do this. Matt King out in British Columbia there at Robinson's Fly Shop has a little video on Insta there, and he does a buck bug. It's worthwhile checking it out. So I'm getting that shape down pretty good here. I don't want it to be too big because I don't want it to float. And I don't want to take too much off. I think that's looking pretty good. So I think I can work with that. Nice little cigar shape. Fairly good sized bug. I'll get a couple extra trims in here, clean it up. That's kind of essentially what we're really after, that sort of a shape or that look. So I feel like I've oversized that a little bit for the hook. Like I said before, I may have a little more condensed body, but I think that'll fish. So let's see, I really like to use an orange hackle. I'm not sure if I've got one. You better write this down too, Chris. I need some smaller hackles. So I may have to use, I think I got a nice little hackle here that could work. Yeah, that should spin forward in there, just sizing this up.
Yeah. Apart from the size, is there anything in particular that you look for in a hackle? Like those are saddles there. They look like pretty good ones, frankly.
This one?
Yeah, so are you looking for stiffness in the barbs or anything, or is this more just for length?
No, length primarily. I don't want them to be too stiff because it is essentially a subsurface fly. And a lot of times I'll go with an orange hackle or like a reddish brown, lower grade rooster cape hackle or something like that, as long as they're not too long.
Cool.
But I've had this stuff kicking around for a while, and I know this is a fairly high quality piece of hackle, but I don't use it on very much stuff, so I'm going to use it on this fly tonight for fun, to say that I did. So what I do now is I got to bring my thread back in here. So I got to remember my steps here. I think what I like to do, make sure I do this right, is I tie it back in on the front of the fly, bind it down, and then I just basically wind that back through that deer hair and get back to the back of the fly here. And the trick here is not to use too many wraps because you start binding down your deer hair, but I'm just going to tie this hackle in and try to do it cleanly. in behind that deer hair, just in front of the butt of that hook. So I've got that tied in, right? Couple of wraps. And then what I do is I leave my thread there, trim that off. So I'm going to wind the hackle up through the deer hair, right? And I want it to sink down into that deer hair. Nice even spaces. Work that down into the deer hair to the front of the hook. I'm just going to grab that with my hackle pliers so it doesn't go anywhere. Let her hang there. Then you got to bring the thread forward. So you bring the thread forward through that and it actually binds that hackle down. So this is like good for the structure. I should probably actually wind it the opposite direction, which I'm not so sure I can do because I started the thread in that direction already. So I'm not going to do that. But this is going to grab that hackle and bind it down. So my buck bugs, you know, they tend to break. It's always the hackle that breaks and wants to come undone. And that's kind of the part of the fly that makes it act properly in the water, is that hackle pushing. So this will bind that hackle down. So I'm to the front now, which is good. I'm clear of the deer hair. Lock that hackle in. Salvage that. I'll be able to use that on my next buck bug. And so I got a little bit too much hackle to the front, so I'm just going to pull it back, tie it down, but you can see what we've done there. So now I'm just going to finish this fly off. And any of that hackle that was kind of hanging out to the front, I'm just pulling it back and creating a nice little head. And so that hackle sort of pushes back over the body of the fly a little bit. Create a nice clean head with this 6/0 thread. It's not easy to create a nice head, but that one's not too bad. No whip finish again. And there we go. We got a brown buck bug with an orange butt and an orange grizzly hackle.
Very nice. Very cool. So that's you know, it's got some buoyancy to it, kind of like the last one. Do you fish that, you know, a similar way to the muddler?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Sorry, do you fish this in a similar way to the muddler?
Not so much a broadside presentation at all. I'm not trying to broadside it at all. So I'm going down right across current in a 45 and, you know, letting it swing across. So I definitely am changing up my angle with this fly.
Sure. And would this be one then that you're fishing faster water than the muddler? Or?
It'll fish better and it'll fish in faster water. I like a bug in the, I wouldn't call it in the head of the pool, but say from, you know, when that water pushes in from the top, you know, it gets to that point where it's sort of going into the chop and maybe just starting to roll back on itself. For that water and then all the way down through the tail out is where I really like a buck bug.
Okay, cool.
So I would say, like I said, I maybe got the body just a little bit longer on that than I would like, and I might have one extra turn of hackle in there, but it'll fish.
Yeah, buggy. Very buggy, as the name would imply.
Yeah, brown buck bug.
Yeah. I mean, you could see, yeah, trout just demolishing that too in a smaller size. For sure.
Yeah, it's a simple fly, but deadly effective. And they're fantastic. I caught a lot of fish on them over the years from here, British Columbia, you know, on the Skeena system, Vancouver Island rivers, you know, out east on the Miramichi and as well here. And like, you know, I'll admit that I'm not fishing these all the time. There's a time and a place for them, especially here in Ontario. Like I said, conditions got to be suitable, has to be clear. Water's got to be clear. You're not fishing these in high dirty water or anything like that. And temperature's got to be there. but when they are, it's a fantastic way to fish. I don't know about you, but when I cast and you have a full floating line and you just, let the rod and the line do that work, it's such a relaxed sort of approach to fishing where you're not, chucking and ducking a weighted fly and a heavy tip, so.
Well, what's nice too is typically fishing a floating line, sort of an early season thing. So if you haven't picked up a two-hander in a little bit, it's a nice, easy way to get in, and you feel really good. Like, oh, I don't know why this casting stuff is easy. Oh, it's you can clear a whole line and then some. And,
yeah, and the way she goes, exactly. Yeah, it's fantastic. So
yeah.
No, I mean it's great. I mean, I'm not an expert dry fly guy by any means. I mean, that's a work in progress. I've caught steelhead and salmon on dries out east and out west. I have not. I honestly haven't taken a Great Lakes steelhead on a waking dry fly yet. I've tried like heck a lot at times, and I haven't been able to do it. I've rolled a couple, but I've never hooked up. So it's coming. But I love my bugs and my little subsurface stuff. I do reasonably well on it. It keeps me coming back. So
you can ask for. That's great.
Keep a few of them in your box. I mean, it's always an option when you got your floating line early season or later in the spring. Go for it. So
yeah, very good. Well, thank you very much for sharing that with us. And I think you might, if we can convince you, be coming back for another round of this at some point as well.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
But yeah, we'll get you back for some more steelhead or some trout or something like that. And I think your partner in crime might be. We still have to nail down a date with Adam, but your co-guide there, Adam Pett, might be in for one of these too. I'll see if by making it official on this stream, we can make it happen.
Yeah, hopefully you can get Adam on. He's a better fly tyer than I am, and he has some great patterns.
Yeah, I've seen some,
and they work good and. They're great flies, so hopefully you'll get them on, and I'm sure you will at some point. So
absolutely, yeah, no, that'll be good when we do. There was one thing off the top that I forgot to mention, and I know we wanted to talk about a little bit. Is you're doing something really cool, which is called saving streamers. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, for sure, absolutely, yeah. So saving streamers. So I'm going to just throw out credit to Neil LeDuc and my partner in crime, Adam. Neil LeDuc came up with the idea, the concept initially, and I know him and Adam brainstormed on it. I kind of got in on it to help move it forward with the Facebook page we developed, but at Saving Streamers. So what we're doing, and if anyone out there listening to this is interested in contributing, we're accepting donations of flies, like in intervals of 6 or 4 flies or something along those lines, and we put them up for, I'm going to say, auction or donation, we'll call it, and we try to do it as often as we can. It takes a little bit of time and effort to get it up, but I think we've been getting flies up once or twice a month over a weekend. So we'll post 5 or 6 groups or batches of flies that are donated from various fly tyers, local, some guides, some avid regular fly tyers, and I think we have some going up. Would be on the 17th. Is that next weekend?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, we got a batch going up. So what you do is we'll start a certain amount of flies up at a certain bid, and you can bid on these flies. And all the money that comes in, and then you actually get the flies at the end of it, and all the money that comes in is going towards restoration projects for the idea was the Maitland River and the Saugeen. So 2020's donations all went to the Middle Grand chapter. Neil and I did some research and tried to figure out what we would do with the money we raised from 2020, decided to go to the Middle Grand. We actually had some trouble trying to sort of figure out how we could help the Maitland, because it didn't seem to be any active groups up there, not-for-profits, doing any sort of work on the river. So I don't know if anyone wants to start a Trout Unlimited chapter up on the Maitland, that'd be a great idea. So we could have somewhere to send the money, get some projects, and help that river system out a little bit. But so it was great. So we donated. I think we donated $1,890 to the Middle Grand this from 2020, which was really cool. And so, and everybody in Southern Ontario, I'll say for the most part, our local guides and fly fishermen are the ones contributing by either donating the flies or bidding on them and winning the flies for themselves. And they're all good, high quality flies. And it's really kind of taken off. Like I can't really keep up with it, but we're doing our best. And so watch for the 17th. There's going to be some flies going up, and we have some flies tied there. I can throw out some love to the fly tires. Jason Newell's got some flies up there. I think Mike Wenzel from Spay, Ontario. Who else is it? Jin Lee Wu. He's got a beautiful fly that is donated. That's going up. So I would hope that would take some nice, bring some nice dollars in. Beautiful fly. And there's one other package I have up there that was donated from Jason Kashabak, who was part of our executive on the Middle Grand. So he had a mentor up on the Saugeen River, Willem Gruber was his name. And he's an older gentleman, but he has a nice Wheatley fly box filled with his flies that he had tied.
Kidding.
And an old booklet on hatches and entomology for rivers that'll go up. And there's an article that sort of goes along with that. I think I posted the link. There's some history there behind that one. So have a read and check it out when it goes up for auction. It's pretty cool. So
terrific.
Yeah, check it out, folks. And then maybe I'll tie up some more of these steelhead flies. I'll do a little better job on these muddler heads.
I was gonna ask.
I'll get a batch of these up. So
yeah, that'd be wicked.
Yeah.
Cool. And if anyone wanted to reach out to you, we've talked a lot about your efforts with Middle Ground and saving streamers, but if anyone did want, I know you're saying you're booking up pretty quick, but if we're looking toward the summer or the fall at this point, if they want to get with you or Adam for a day of steelhead or trout or bass, whatever it is, how would they do that?
They would want to contact me probably through email, which is kind of my preferred method of communication when it comes to booking trips. But you can certainly reach out to me on Facebook, the Flywater Facebook page, or flywater.guiding on Instagram. But my email is flywater.guiding@primus.ca. Yeah, feel free, reach out. And, if we can't squeeze you in this spring, there's always fall and, or this summer. And we can do, it's not just trout and steelhead. We do a little bit of smallmouth stuff and on the river and teach lots of lessons too. We love beginners, and we love to instruct and teach and introduce people to the sport as well. So,
yeah, awesome. Well, I think everybody got a good taste of your instructional style tonight, and I imagine that a lot of people are probably chomping at the bit to get a little bit more of that. So I hope they do get in touch.
Yeah, me too. I can't wait. It's been a long winter.
Yeah, that it has. We could all use some fishing, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Terrific. Well, thanks again for coming out. For everybody watching, I hope you enjoyed. If you have questions, if you need materials, you know where to reach us at the shop here. We are still open for curbside pickup and gladly shipping orders, even if we can't have anyone in. And then next week, we hope to see everybody once more. We have another stream with Ian Troop. He's going to be doing another talk, this time on streamer fishing. So we have that to look forward to, plus some more things down the road. So I hope you can all join us, and we'll see you then. One last look. Nice.
There you go. My Steelhead Muddler, take picture, match the hatch.
Yeah, terrific. All right. Have a good night, guys. Take care.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Yeah.